Good morning, all of our followers on Sofa Safari. This morning I have my handsome co-host. He's over there. He's still got his beard. Yeah, he's looking good this morning. He's on the tracker seat. And the reason why we are deciding to try and go at this together this morning is because of the old bullet Dale Jackson making us look pretty bad a couple of days ago. So we don't want to let him keep, sort of relishing his victory over us and finding lion cubs and leopards and so on, even though Britt found that leopard. But so far, my tracker, the handsome Chad Cocking, has found some tracks on the road. We've got a male lion walking on the left-hand side and a lioness walking on the right-hand side. However, last night, and you'll remember this from Chad's video that will come out just before this one, we did have one of the Naru males going into the block. And once we followed him and turned off for a couple of seconds, we could hear the cubs, the River Pride cubs, busy calling in the darkness. So we're hoping that they're on a kill this morning, because if you remember from that episode, we're not really allowed to view cubs after dark. Using a spotlight on them is very unethical, and also just being around animals that young after dark is unethical. You never know what dynamic you might change as far as hyenas are involved, other lions are involved, things like that. So yeah, let's see what we can find there this morning. Stick around. So we were just driving on the road, and a little bit of a mess on the road here. And Britt, maybe climb down with me. Let's have a closer look at the scene, just so we can quickly figure out what's happened. Alright.
Behind the scenes.
So judging by the tracks that are in the area, I mean, you can see there's some big old plate tracks over there, and a few more over on this side, and you can also see a trunk mark over here, so like that. But there's the big tracks we're talking about. There we go, the big old circles. And for those of you that have been on safari before or been watching Sofa Safari for a few weeks now, you'll know that this is an elephant track. And this mess on the road is not because a sneaky hyena came and bit an elephant's tail off or something like that. This is because an elephant gave birth here. And last night we could actually hear, or at least I could hear, the screaming of an elephant. I don't know if that was coming from here or from a different area, but I should imagine it's quite a painful thing to go through, so they probably make a fair bit of noise. But yeah, an elephant has given birth here overnight, which is quite special to know. It's a little bit weird and gross to come across just lying on the road like this, but yeah, all the placental material here and over there. And it's quite interesting that hyenas haven't found this yet, because I'm sure they would relish this. This is a bit of a delicacy for those guys. So yeah, very cool. This is the first time that I've ever encountered something like this in my career, coming across just pure evidence of an elephant birthing. There's a little bit more over here. So you can see she was up and down the road, maybe struggling a bit. It's not an easy thing to birth a sort of 40-50 kilogram baby. But if anything can do it, an elephant can do it. I tell you what, for those of you that might know, what is an animal that is bigger at birth than an African elephant? It's an African animal as well. So let me know in the comments below. Okay, so we may have found the herd of elephants that houses the female that gave birth that we looked at a little short while ago. So we're just going to go past them slowly and see if a really small baby, pops out of the woodwork. I think mom would be moving a little bit slower, but you never know. You never know if she's here already. They're a very close family knit unit, these herds of elephants, so they do introduce their babies to the herd almost immediately. And from there it's a lot more protected. You've got a whole bunch of quite big and strong aunties and sisters and cousins and brothers, so it's a pretty good organization to be a part of. But I don't see any baby elephants, unfortunately, but I would imagine that baby elephant is no taller than the grass at the moment. Okay folks, so we are on approach to where we had the lions, presumably the lions last night, where we could hear the cubs making a bit of noise in the darkness. And on the way in we are finding vultures now. So it's a good sign that there was a kill in the area. Whether that kill is still on the table or whether the kitty cats have already finished it all is still up in the air. But we are off-road, we're in the block, and we are looking for them. But always nice to stop and spend a little bit of time with white-backed vultures, or any vulture for that matter, because they are actually a lot more endangered and rare than most people think. So yeah, never fail to stop to appreciate a vulture, if that makes sense. But yeah, let's carry on looking. we've been sitting quietly in the area where we thought we could hear the cubs and their mother last night, potentially on a kill. But we've been sitting quietly now for about 3 or 4 minutes and we can't really hear anything. There are still vultures in the trees. There's actually a couple of vultures just up here. So we're going to try and drive around this thicket that's ahead of us and see if we can find these lions. We'll give it a few more tries. Otherwise, maybe it's time to start looking elsewhere. But yeah, let's see what we can find. So for those of you that have been on safari with me before, you'll know that my tracker is usually a very large African man. His name's Jack. We call him Dagger Boy. Jack has lost a bit of weight and he's become a fair bit more white, but he's over there. And he has picked up this elephant placenta that we found a bit earlier this morning. And we drove past, we stopped, we had a look. But when we were here this morning, there was no lion tracks here. Now all of a sudden, there's a lion track in the area. I don't really want to touch the ground yet too much. But there is a lion track here. You can see where he was putting his paws, going down on his haunches here, and actually eating a fair bit of the placenta, which is a great bit of nutrition for him. So yeah, walked in during the time that we've been looking in the block for where they had their original kill, maybe with the cubs and so on. So we're retracing our steps, and now we know that there's been a lion stopping here in that time. So cool. Interesting to know, a little bit frustrating for us because we could have just sat here all morning and he would have popped out and eaten this for us. But it's a good sign that he is in the area and freshly in the area, so let's see if we can find him. So pretty cool, we've come down to this little dam, which is funny enough called Little Kariba. For those of you that know the real Kariba, you'll know that this is indeed a very, very little Kariba. But there's some elephants in the background, you know, and while you're looking for lions and leopards and so on, the big pachyderms are always fun to come across. But while we were sitting here, there's a little dwarf bittern that's landed on the log over there, and that's quite a special bird to see in this area, especially because we don't have rivers that flow all year long and so forth. But special to see. At this particular dam you can get some really good birds, and dwarf bittern being one of them. That is the first time that I've seen this particular dwarf bittern here. But for all our birders, you'll know just how special that is. And yeah, he has been now chased away by a bunch of other birds that look like starlings, those virtual starlings that we spoke about a few days ago.
Mosque swallows.
Chad's picking up on some mosque swallows flying around as well. You can actually hear their call above us, that whack, whack. One just landing. And they're quite cool. They're coming down to the river or to the dam here to get some mud. And for those of you that have swallows where you live, just about everybody that means, just about everybody, the reason they're getting their mud, in fact, let me pose this question to you. Why do you think they'd be coming down here to get mud? And, you know, let me know in the comments below. Why would a bird be harvesting mud? Happened upon a couple of elephant bulls. You can see the one that's closest to us, his tail's a little bit cocked. He's looking over his head, his ears are a little bit out. You know, as we came around the corner, he immediately started displaying like that. I think it's just because he got a little bit of a surprise from our entry into the scene. But yeah, it's just him sort of showing a bit of stress, showing a little bit of caution towards us, and maybe a little bit of a warning towards us as well. The other bull has moved off into the thickets there now, but you often find elephant bulls together. You know, they have been shunned from their herd. Usually in their late teens, early 20s is when they get pushed away from their mom's herd. And so what you often find is bull elephants will actually find each other out here if they don't get pushed out together. But they'll find each other out in the wilderness, and they do enjoy each other's company. It's just safety in numbers. It's also opportunity to learn from each other, and maybe just a bit of camaraderie, you know, a bit of friendship. Elephants are a deeply social creature with incredible bonds and things like that. So it's not hard to imagine why they would like to share the company of another bull. And you sometimes find them in herds, you know, little groups, 3, 4, 5 elephant bulls in one setting. So yeah, always nice to come across them. Generally speaking, elephant bulls are quite relaxed creatures, but when you surprise them like that, they can get a little bit iffy. So you got to be careful. But Britt didn't scream, so good job, love. Right, so it's tree time again. You know, myself and Chad, we always like to stop and talk about the finer, smaller things in the bush. And trees seem to have sparked quite a bit of interest for a lot of our fans and followers. So there's a tree on this side that I want to talk to you about. It's called a Mopani tree, and Judge is going to carry on looking for the lion, so keep an eye on him in the background. Maybe he'll get a line around his neck at some point. But yeah, this is the Mopani tree here, and there's a lot of them. I mean, you can see there's a few little guys coming through the bush here, a few others behind me, and they usually grow in these sort of groves, is what we could call them. In this area, it's not the most prominent tree. We find them here and there in these little thickets and lines, but as soon as you start going a bit further north in the Kruger National Park, you eventually get to something that we call the Mopani belt. It's not too far from here. It just starts in the north of the Timbavati, and as soon as you hit that Mopani belt, it's kind of just basically all you see all the way through the Kruger National Park. Up until the north there's a couple of changes here and there, but through the Kruger National Park into Zimbabwe, it's just this Mopani belt. It's hundreds of kilometers long, and this is the most common tree throughout that entire belt. It always looks a little bit scarce, and for those of you that have been to the Kruger National Park, you would have noticed that around the Mopani tree you don't see a lot of grass growing, you don't see a lot of other trees growing, and it's kind of like this dense, scary forest when it is the summer. Because of all these leaves, it becomes a very tedious place to walk around, and one of the main reasons for that is because elephants love to eat this tree. It's very high in protein, and the elephants do get a kick out of that in the correct season. Of course, they will choose to eat other things as well, but it's said that when elephants and Mopani trees are living in harmony, when you have the right population amount of each species, both elephant and Mopani, you'll often find their height will be quite quite equal to each other. So you find all these Mopani trees grow to the same height, and that's because the elephants are supposedly keeping them in check and feeding on them. But this is what one of the leaves looks like. So you can see there, looks just like a butterfly. If you use your imagination a bit, you don't have to use it too hard, I don't think. But Mopani is actually the Shona word for butterfly, which is a Zimbabwean language, Shona. So yeah, the Mopani tree is, or Mopani is butterfly. And funny enough, these trees don't actually attract any butterflies, but they do attract Goliath moths, which are just these big, or emperor moths, sorry, these big moths that you find out and about. And from that moth, you also get something called the Mopani worm, which is just this famous delicacy in Africa. And if you've ever been on safari or had the chance, you may have been offered Mopani worms, which are these big, it's kind of like a caterpillar about the size of my pinky, and they just crawl all along here. I mean, they can become really infested with these worms, so to say. And what the locals will do is they will capture them, and then they cure them with some salt and spices and things like that, and you get to eat them. I haven't eaten one in a while, but it does taste basically like spiced dirt. If you like that sort of thing, so feel free to try it next time you're in Africa. But they are big, beautiful caterpillars with a lot of red and white and black and sometimes yellow, and they just crawl along the tree. And when you stop next to thickets like this, although this isn't the greatest thicket to talk about, but when you stop in a Mopani grove, you can actually turn off your engine, and if there's enough Mopani worms in the area, you can hear this audible. That's my best impersonation, another impersonation with Luke. But you can actually hear them eating. And over the course of a day, maybe a few days, they can strip an entire tree like this. It's quite ridiculous to see them go through that. But yeah, the Mopani tree, one of the lesser or least appreciated trees by all of us here, because of that Mopani belt, which just goes on for miles and miles and miles. But in situations like this, where we have mostly nice bush veldt, with a few Mopani trees coming in, we'll accept them that far. It's starting to get a little bit hot, and we still haven't found those lions, unfortunately, but sometimes the cats just remain elusive for the day. If we found them every day, they would probably be pretty boring by now. So yeah, it's nice to work hard, but as we slowly making our way back towards the lodge, we are still looking for the lions, or some form of predator or big creature that we can chat about. But something did catch my eye, and it's that white stuff over there. You might just see it in the background now, but what I first wanted to show you was this is a little piece of dung over here, and it comes from an Impala. So you can see, very black in nature. I can break it apart, and once I break it apart, you can see that it's quite fibrous. It's full of vegetation and things like that. Now this particular animal chews its food at length. It also makes use of 4 stomachs. So the first stomach is just basically a storage chamber. It's called the rumen. So when the impala goes to eat, it'll first fill that rumen up quite quickly, and then during the heat of the day, like now when it starts getting really hot, that little impala will find some shade and then regurgitate that food and then chew it at length there before swallowing it again. It's just a very efficient digestive system, which I'm not going to get fully into now because I want to talk about that. But just to show you the contrast, that's basically what a rumen, a herbivorous rumen dung looks like, and they do just get bigger and bigger basically. So if you can imagine, a giraffe's going to be like that, a kudu is going to be like that, and a little deka is going to be like that. Okay, they all have 4 chambers to the stomach. But come with me, let's have a look at this over here and check it out. So this is very evidently, I mean, when I put those little bits of dung next to that there, and you'll notice I'm not touching this either because I'll get to that in a second, but when I put these little pieces of dung next to it, you can see it's just a very, very different substance that has been produced here in comparison to there. Now, some of you that have been on safari before, and maybe even those of you that are in the know, will immediately know what this is. There's only one animal out here that produces dung of this nature that goes this white this quickly or that quickly, and it can take about 12 hours for the animal, once it's produced or defecated, for the scat to turn this bright white. And you can break it open, and you often, when you get nice and close, you can see there are bits of fur in there, maybe bits of bone, all sorts of things. So it's like a giant marshmallow. There we go. So break it open, and you can see now that whatever has been eaten has been really well digested. Let me find a little stick here that we can just poke around with. Really well digested, but you can still see the hair, and hair is one of those things that most digestive systems just really struggle to break down. So in all predators, and this is a predator, you'll often find bits of hair floating around inside there. I hope you can see that with the camera. It is getting quite bright now, but this animal, as I say, some of you may have figured it out, is the spotted hyena that's come to use the toilet here. And the reason why its scat gets so white so quickly is because it consumes bones. It eats a lot of calcium, all right, calcium carbonate. And hyenas have this incredibly powerful jaw, and in fact, pound for pound, probably the most powerful jaw in the mammalian world. Now, I'm not too sure if that includes marine mammals. You know, I'm more of a terrestrial mammals kind of guy, but maybe if you know more about marine mammals, you can leave a comment below and educate me. But hyenas out here have a very powerful jaw, vastly more powerful than something like a leopard, for instance, or a lion. And what that allows them to do is to crack into bones to access the marrow that's running throughout the center of that bone, which is a food source that other predators just simply can't get to. Now, on top of that, their digestive system is incredibly strong, and it's able to actually assimilate or break down and then assimilate that calcium carbonate, which is crazy because you still see hair, but it's able to break down the bone and utilize that. And this is one of the reasons why hyenas don't tend to struggle as much as other predators, because there's always a food source for them. You know, they can always go missioning around, find an old carcass, find some old bones that's been left by lions or leopards, and crack into those bones, access the marrow running throughout, and get themselves a good meal. And marrow can last within a bone for, I believe, up to about 2-3 years. So it can be a meal very far down the road. But it's once they've produced this that you know, other animals are then able to utilize it. And some of the animals I've seen myself utilizing it are things like the tortoises. They will come and eat this just so they can help grow their carapace, their shell, you know, get them a little bit of strength. Things like snails, apparently get something called a giant African land snail, which is just this snail the size of my fist, and I'll have to find you a shell at some point to show you. But they will come and eat it just to help them grow their calcium carbonate based shell. And then I believe things like vultures, I've never seen that with my own eyes, but vultures do apparently peck at hyena scat, maybe just to help strengthen their beak. And I would presume that other large raptors and birds might do the same thing. But I like to talk from experience, so I've never seen that myself, but I have heard about it. So yeah, this is hyena scat, and you usually find it, you don't often find just a single pile. What you'll often find is a pile there, pile here, pile there, and that's because they use this as a territorial marker, like a latrine, that just engulfs the area in that scent of that particular clan. Just like a lion would spray a tree, or a wildebeest might rub its orbital glands on a tree just to mark territory. However, I think this hyena on this occasion just really needed to go. and this is where he went. So yeah, if you ever see bright white poo while you're on safari and your guide tries to trick you, you can say, I know, it's a hyena. Cute. Alright, so as we were driving down the road, we came across a very small individual. He's just pushing his way through the undergrowth there. Shame, we don't want to stress him out too much. Remember what we say, we don't handle things like this. But it is a baby leopard tortoise. And I don't know if you remember from a previous video, we actually found quite a big one. This is what they look like when they're smaller, obviously. But it brings to mind a good story that my good friend Scotch, a lot of you will know Scotch, he's one of the guides at Thunder Tulu. He's a big personality and we really love him, but he's also a hugely funny person. And in the Shangaan culture you get something called a shifutswana, which is just a tiny little tortoise that one would keep on themselves for luck. And we always joke with Scotch that the reason why he finds so much wildlife is because he has a shifutswana in his backpack. So he keeps one of these little guys with him wherever he goes. And that's the tradition behind them, at least. A little tiny tortoise is your lucky charm, a shifutswana. Alright, it brings you luck in many other ways, you know, financial, game viewing, whatever, keeping away from the police when you're speeding on the highway, whatever you want to apply your luck to, you can do it. But yeah, for those of you, because we often hear this, people come from all around the world, and when they see a tortoise, people go, oh look, it's a turtle. So guys, please remember, a turtle is the one that has flippers and they swim in the ocean. A tortoise is the one that has claws and they walk on the land, like you just saw this guy. And then you get something called a terrapin, which is like a mix between the two. It's like a freshwater turtle, but it still has claws, just that those claws are webbed. So you can actually swim in the water and climb around on the land. Okay, they also have different shells. A tortoise has a very hard shell. A turtle has quite a leathery shell, and a terrapin also has that kind of leathery, a little bit harder than a turtle shell. So yeah, but anyway, he's moved off into the undergrowth here. We're not going to stress him out too much more because shame, he's just a little guy. But there's this little tracks. Digga, 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 digga. I don't know if you guys can see that. That's what a tortoise track looks like there, be it a very small one. And we're back, guys, and it is the afternoon. We no longer have Chad, the very handsome tracker. And we thought we'd get out this afternoon to see if we could find a little bit more for you, a little bit to spice up the sofa safari. This morning we spent a large amount of time trying to find the lions, and it just got a little bit too hot and the cats probably went to sleep. It was quite frustrating because the one cat actually came and ate that elephant placenta and then moved on between us being there and going to check their den and coming back. So these frustrating things do happen. But this afternoon we're going to go and try follow up just briefly in that area, see if the lions have moved or see if we can locate them for you. Otherwise we look forward to a beautiful sunset tonight and hopefully some other goodies along the way. So Carol Baber, this one is for you, beautiful elephants in the sunset. And we know that you have been wanting to see some of those remarkable African sunsets, and at the moment there is one going on behind us, which we'll show you in a little bit, but for the time being we have a couple or a few beautiful elephants in front of us, just enjoying the last light of the day, having a nice bit of a feed. And you can see that little baby there messing around with his trunk, trying to figure out what this tree is, what he can get from it. Is it a play toy or can he eat it? So yeah, elephants of that age, you know, that sort of 4 or 5 year age, are exactly the same as humans of that age. They're kind of full of attitude, full of sass, full of personality, and life is more of a party than anything to be taken seriously. But as soon as they grow a bit older, they start to take things a bit more seriously. But a baby elephant or an adolescent elephant is one of the true joys of going on safari, you know, seeing them out and about with their mom, just messing about, playing with things. Anyway, there he comes with his little tusks sticking out. Now, the other day I quoted milk tusks in my video, and we got a question on our YouTube page about those milk tusks and if they fall out. So the baby you're looking at the moment would have already gone through its milk tusks, and it's now onto its actual tusks. So when elephants are born, they do slowly grow milk tusks up to about 5 centimeters in length before they fall out of the mouth, and then they're slowly replaced by real tusks. But the reason why I said those were milk tusks and why I get that sort of phrase or throw that phrase in is because at this age, this youngster that you have in the frame at the moment has those little white tusks, but he'll still be suckling. So even though he's suckling on mom, he's got these tusks, and those are digging into her breast quite badly, and that causes her to get quite upset. So that's why I sometimes refer to them as milk tusks. So hopefully that clears that up. But you can see these ellies, they've had a bit of water, they've had a bit of a bath today, they've splashed around, a little bit wet still. They've had a good day. It's been hot today. I think we hit 33, 34 degrees Celsius, which for our American friends is like 100, 98, 100, 102, somewhere there. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for all the rest of us, it was about 33 degrees Celsius today. So the ellies would have enjoyed a lovely mud roll, a good splash of water at the peak, at midday. But for now, they really are just enjoying a nice early dinner. So the notch in the ear is probably just from a rip earlier on in her life. You know, elephants, their ears are very big, but they're also quite papery thin. A little bit, well, I wouldn't say papery thin, but they're delicate in comparison to the rest of the elephant. And so what you find is she maybe ripped her ear on a tree when she was younger. She might not have even been that much younger than she is right now. But it's just an injury that's lasted. And you often find elephants with holes in their ears. You know, maybe they went through their naughty adolescent years and got a few ear piercings. But yeah, you often find them with ripped ears, holes in the ears. And you can sometimes, with the bulls and so on, you can use those tatty ears, those ripped and damaged ears, as a bit of an age indicator. So the whistling sound that you're hearing coming from the bush, where Brit's got the camera fixated on, is from a little creature known as a dwarf mongoose. And it's such a pity, because as we came up the road now, they had little babies out on the road, and they stuck around for a little bit, but we had to reverse a bit just to get the angle right, and they ran back into the bush. So we're going to sit patiently. There goes one running at the back. We're going to sit patiently and just see if they do come onto the road again. They are a wonderful little animal that does become quite relaxed with your presence if you give them enough time. There they are now. Tiny little baby. How cool is that? I mean, that's just days old. I don't even know how old it is. My expertise are limited in this, but that's a small baby. I mean, that's very, very sweet. I mean, the full-grown adults only get to the size of maybe a large rat, if you will, including the length of their tail. They're a lot cuter than a rat, though. But to see the little babies like this moving with the clan, or with the business, if you remember the collective noun for mongoose is business. So to see the babies moving with the business like this across the road and scampering along is just incredibly sweet. And it's these little moments when you're in or on safari that have the tendency to stick with you for a long time. Such a wonderful thing to spend time with, all these little whistles and chirps and cheers that come out from the bush. You can see that they're going underground and then coming above ground. You see the little heads poking out and going back under. That's because for a large amount of time, or basically every night, I mean, they do sleep elsewhere, but they make use of termite mounds, and they'll actually go underground and den in those mounds. And apparently what they do is they'll move around their territory, which is probably about 1 kilometer or 2 kilometers squared. So not very big to you or I, but to these little guys, that's a big territory, you know. And they'll move from territorial mound to territorial mound as they go. You know, just scent marking, defecating, you know, doing all of those things that you need to do in order to mark your territory. So they do that on sort of a calendar month, and then they'll come back. I'm sure they follow the moon or something like that, but yeah, it's quite an interesting little operation that they have going on for them. Whereas something like the banded mongoose, from what I find, is more localized. They also have their territory, but they tend to be more localized. However, that might be a skewed idea of what banded mongoose are, because we're so used to our little group of them at Tundatula that never seem to leave. So they've got a pretty sweet life. But between the banded and the dwarf mongoose, I think the dwarf mongoose takes the cake. They're so sweet, they're so cute. And they're very confident little creatures. As I say, once you give them a little bit of time to become used to your presence and the sounds and the smells that you produce, I could have said that better. But yeah, once they become used to you, they really do relax and start to just play around and have fun and do what dwarf mongoose were meant to do. those ripples that you see at the moment in the water belong to Harry the hippo. Corny name, we know, but you know, it works. Alliteration. There he is, just poking his head up now. And this is the famous Mashatan Dam on Tandatula. And Harry's been hanging out here quite a bit recently. He's got a few dams that he moves between. And as I said a little bit earlier, this is our, in our first ever episode of Sofa Safari. We tried to look at Harry, the hippo, but he wasn't here. There we go. Going to give us a bit of a show. But we did have that one dugger boy. And let me rather let the wildlife do the talking. Alright, he's going to quiet down. But for those of you that didn't watch that episode, but might know, maybe let me know in the comments, what is a dugger boy? What is a dugger boy? But for those of you that did watch that episode, if you remember, we had the dugger boy just lazing out at sunset. So yeah, nice to catch up with the hippo now and see him making a bit of noise and throwing his weight around. He's quite a character. So yeah, let's see if he gives us a yawn, makes a bit of a splash, maybe he'll charge us, who knows. Let's see what happens. So while we sit and watch the hippo, and as he makes his noises every once in a while, and maybe there he is. Hey buddy, Harry the hippo, everyone. But if you listen carefully in the background, there's a call going off. That one there, it's an African Scops owl, and the way that I always remember it, and you have to use your imagination a bit. Let's listen. There you go. I always think it sounds somewhat like a sonar in a submarine, if you know what I mean. And when you have to remember so many bird calls, you try and assign something from your imagination to it. And that's what I get. There you go. African Scops owl. He gave us one yawn and a bit of a grunt, that classic African sound. One of my favorite sounds is when a hippo does that call. I'm not going to try and impersonate that one, it's a bit too far out of my league. But yeah, Harry's been behaving. We've had the African Scops owl going, beautiful sunset in the background, but it is getting a bit dark now to film the hippo and his escapades or his nonsense. So it is getting approaching more sort of cat movement time. So we're going to try and loop around the area once more on the way back to the camp and see if maybe the lions do pop out. They are somewhere in the area. They're sleeping somewhere, I'm sure, but maybe by now they're starting to stand up, lick, yawn. Maybe we'll even get some roaring. But yeah, let's see. You never know. Bye, Harry. I know I still have my sunglasses on my head. Don't need a comment, but I never knew being in the spotlight was such a bright affair. But myself and Britt, we've been sitting here for about 10 minutes now, just listening to the bush, hoping that those kitty cats will make a sound for us. But so far they haven't said anything. So they still might be quite fat and lazy from their meal last night and just really not in any mood to do anything. But yeah, nonetheless, thank you so much for joining us for another Sofa Safari. It's been a pleasure having you. We got to check out that hippo, got some cool zebra, the elephants, always, stars of the show. And I hope you guys enjoyed the trees and the little tortoise as well, the Shippotswana. And before we sign off, just a quick shout out to Tony and Lee from the UK. Thank you so much for following us and enjoying what we're putting out. And to all of you everywhere in the world, thank you so much for tuning in and sending us your questions and interacting with us. Please don't stop. We're really enjoying it. We enjoy getting your questions and we enjoy posing questions to you. So yeah, if you are enjoying our content, please don't forget to subscribe, share, like, drop a comment below. All those good things. And thank you so much once again for tuning in. Until next time, see ya.